So what I'd like you to have open right now is the sample check register and bank statement that I posted on Classroom. We're going to use this spreadsheet to help simulate what it would be like to actually reconcile your bank account. So I've kind of mocked up what some of those statements might look like. So on the right side of this statement, you have what the bank statement might look like. So this might be the information that the bank sends you every month. Then on the left, I've kind of mocked up what the check register might look like, the document that you keep with your bank account. And in the middle, I've kind of laid out some of the different steps we're going to follow on how to actually do this reconciliation. Okay, so we're going to kind of bounce back and forth here between both of these sides of the spreadsheet, and I'm going to kind of flip back and forth between some notes as we kind of walk you through how to do this. Okay, right. So let's take a look at the first step here. Step number one, you have to make sure that your check register is up to date. In theory, as you are making withdrawals and deposits out of your account, you should be recording all of that in your checkbook. As you are kind of going through, you should be keeping track of a running total as far as how much money is in your checking account. What is the current balance in your checking account? So anytime you write a check or go to the ATM or make a debit card purchase, you should subtract that amount from your balance. If you deposit a check, you should be able to add that money back in to your balance. In theory, you would have a final balance for the month in your checking account, or your check register. But if you haven't, you need to make sure you bring the check register up to date. Okay, so we're going to do that right now. Excuse me. Okay. So if you look on the check register, we started the beginning of the month. We started February 15th with a balance of $12.34.33. And when I wrote a check to Mr. Jones, I subtracted from that $35.89. And then I subtracted out $85 for this check. And I subtracted $45 for the phone bill, et cetera, et cetera. When I got down to February 24th, I got a paycheck. So we added that money back into the balance from the line above. And now my new balance is $1,511.94. Subtract, subtract, subtract. Right. So anytime there's anything in the withdrawal column, that is money that is coming out of the account. Anything in the deposit column is money that's going in. So in theory, we would want to, let me open a calculator. So in theory, we would come down here, and my current total is $541.96, and we're going to add to it my $910.36 paycheck, and that's the new balance that would go here would be $1452.32. And then we took out $125 for books and took out $52.10 for dining. Okay? And we would do this all the way down until we got a final balance here in cell G25. Okay? I've set the spreadsheet up to do some of this math, so I'm going to let it do the math for us. Okay, so here is the ending balance on our check register for now. Okay, cool. So that's step number one. And in this case, I'd like you to put that number here in cell J4, 1885.58. So that, as far as we know, is what I believe should be in my bank account. My bank believes I should have $915, so we need to figure out what's going on there. Okay? So that's step one. You have to bring the check register up to date if you need to. If you have been doing this all along, you can just continue to step two. Okay. Step two. What we want to first focus on is what are things that I know about that the bank does not know about. As we identified before, the two things that I have control over is checks that I wrote during the month that have not cleared and deposits that I made that have not hit my bank statement yet. Let's start with the checks. Okay. What we're going to do is we are going to compare all of the checks that you have listed in your checkbook, in your check register, excuse me. And I want to see if any check that I wrote in my check register also appears on my bank statement. If it appears in both places, that means that check was given to the recipient cashed the check cleared, and that money has already gone to the other person's bank account. So you wrote a check and you knew about it, and the bank also knew about the check. The other thing we have to pay attention to are checks that you wrote in your check register but aren't on your bank statement. Those are checks that have not cleared yet. The term your bank might use is that the checks are in transit, right? So you gave me a check for my birthday, but I have not cashed that check yet. I still have it on my dining room table waiting to go to the bank. Okay? So you knew about it, but it hasn't hit the bank. The bank has no idea that that check exists yet. But in your mind, you already wrote that check. So that money has really already left your bank account in your mind, hasn't it? So we're going to have to make an adjustment on the bank statement side to say, no, I already spent that $100. Let's take that out. Okay, let's do this one step at a time now. Okay. What we're going to start to do is we're going to go down your check register, and I want to see, do the checks that start here, do they also appear over here on the bank statement? The way you want to do this is you do want to look for the check number in both spots. The dates don't necessarily matter in this case, and I'll show you an example here in a second. So let's go down the check register and see, does the check appear in both the check register and the bank statement? If it does, I'm going to make an X or something here in this column here with the little check mark on it. Okay. Check 221 for $35.89. Does that show up in the bank statement? Here it is. Check 221, $35.89. Okay. So I'm going to put an X there to mark that, yep, we know about it. Check 222 for $85. Does that show up? Check 222 for $85 does show up on the register. Okay. So I'd like you to keep doing this and try to identify which checks have showed up on the register and on the bank statement and which ones don't. Check 223 for $45. 223 for $45, there it is. Check 224 for $325. So check 224. 224 does show up on the register. Check 225. 225 does show up. Check 226. 226 shows up. 227. Okay, 227 does not show up. So we're going to skip that and come back to that in a second. We can also look to see if any deposits you made also show up. We'll just do this while we're looking at it. Does a deposit for $890.27 show up? There it is, deposit $890.27. We're going to say yes on that. The rent, $228, check 228. 228 shows up. Check 229 for groceries. Check 229 does show up on the check register. Check 230. Check 230 does not show up. We'll come back to that. Check 231 does show up. Check 232. Check 232 shows up. Check 233. 233 is not on the register yet. We'll skip that and come back to that. Check 234. 234 does not show up. Check 235. Check 235 does not show up. Does a paycheck deposit of 9/10/36 show up? There's a deposit 9/10/36, so we've accounted for that. Does check 236 show up? 236 does show up on the account. Check 237. 237 does show up on the register. On the bank statement. Check 238. 238 does not show up. Check 239 does show up. And does another deposit of $1,123 show up? It does not. We're going to skip that. Okay. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 checks. I have 6 checks that have been written but have not shown up on my bank statement yet. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to write down all of the checks that appear on the register but haven't hit the statement yet. So that's 227, 2434, 230, 1095, 233, 42319. And we're going to do this for all the checks we don't know about already. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Right now we're just concerned about the checks that have to come out. All right. I would like to get a total on this. So really, these are checks you've already written that really, in your mind, that money is gone, right? That money has been spent. So I want to know how much money has been spent. You can take out a calculator, or I'm going to let the spreadsheet do the math for me. I have $175.27, if my math is correct. I'm just double checking my numbers. Okay. So, in theory, there is $175.27 worth of expenses that should come out of your check register, should come out of your bank account, because in your mind you've already spent it, but the bank doesn't know about it yet. My guess is that all of these companies and all these places you wrote checks for, they just haven't cashed the check yet. No worries. So step 4 is now we need to remove $175.27 from your bank statement. Okay. So the current ending balance on the bank statement is $915.12. The outstanding checks is $175.27. And we're going to subtract that. Here's the subtotal we're now working on. Okay. So step number 2 is to compare the check register against the bank statement and mark off any checks that appear in both spots. If they appear in both spots, you know you spent the money and the bank knows you spent the money. We're good. But if you find checks that have not been checked off, that don't appear on the bank statement, that means you spent the money, but the bank doesn't know about it yet. So we're going to remove that money from your bank statement total. Okay. If we pause here for a second, we'll see here that when you wrote this check for Mr. Jones, you wrote that check on February 15th, check 221. But check 221 didn't show up on your bank statement until March 5th. That's probably not an error. It just means that Mr. Jones probably sat on this check for a while and didn't actually deposit it until maybe the end of March. And then it took a couple of days for that check to clear. So this is the actual date when the check really cleared the bank, but this is when you wrote the check on February 15th. So it's okay that the dates don't match. We really want to look for the check numbers. That's the important thing there. Okay. Okay. Step 4. Step 4 wants us to look at, are there any deposits that show up in your check register but are not in the bank statement? That's money in your mind that you put into your bank account that the bank has not taken and hasn't seen yet, right? So just in the last step, we took out money you spent, but the bank hadn't accounted for yet. And in this step, we want to add in any deposits that you know about that the bank hasn't accounted for yet. So if we look at the spreadsheet, do we have any deposits that have not been checked off the register? And there was this last one here, this last paycheck on March 5th for $1,123.98. That is money you put in your account. So now what we're going to do is take the subtotal from the last step, $739.85, and we want to add to it any deposits that are outstanding. And the only one we have right now is this $1,123.98. That's money we have to add back. So now I would like to take the balance and add to it any of the deposits that are outstanding. So right now, in my mind, the final amount of money that should be in my bank account is $1,863.83. Cool. So now we've taken care of the things that you know about, but the bank doesn't. Our next step involves things that the bank knows about, but you don't know about. Okay, so let's take a look at that. Okay, so the next step involves what the bank knows about. The two things that the bank can put on your account that they won't tell you about are going to be fees and interest payments. Okay, so we want to look to see, first, are there any fees or charges listed on the bank statement? That's money that would have been removed from your account. So we're going to have to find those and subtract those from the checkbook balance. And then I want to look for any interest payments that maybe have put into your account. And that's money that has to be added back into your checkbook. Okay, so let's take a look at the spreadsheet. Okay, so first, we're going to find the ending balance on the check register. The ending balance on the check register is what we calculated here. So that's going to be $1,885.58. And I want to subtract from it any fees that are currently on my statement that I haven't touched base with yet. These are all checks and deposits. And at the end of the month, there was a $25 fee. So we're going to account for the $25. Right? So in reality, that money should come out of my account. So here's my 1860.58 is where I am right now. And I'm going to take this other total here, 1860.58. And the last step is we want to add to this balance any interest payments that show up. And here's a $3.25 interest payment. And I'd like to add this in. So I'll do a little bit of math here. And in reality, this is what I believe should be the final balance on my check register. And here we need to make sure and double check, do these two numbers match? And in our case, they do. So here we go. Your bank account is now balanced. We've looked at everything the bank knows about and accounted for it, and we took into effect anything that you knew about and we accounted for it. If for some reason you get to the bottom of this and it is not balanced. Things are not what they should be. Unfortunately, one of the things you're going to have to do is go back and double check your math. Okay. That's usually where I make errors. And so when I was transposing these numbers here and taking out the calculator and doing the adding or putting it on the spreadsheet, did you screw up your math somewhere? Number two, I want you to double check that you in fact have accounted for all of the unchecked checks. Did you miss a check? Was there something you overlooked? Right? I want you to look to make sure you've taken into account all of the fees and interest. You really kind of have to go back and do the whole thing again to make sure that your math is off. If it's just your math, you miss something. Okay. Sometimes you can get a sense of maybe what's off if you look at the difference between what the bank and the check register final total should be. Let's say you're off by $150 and there is somehow a $150 check that you didn't account for. Well, there's your $150 you missed. So you have to maybe just go back and check your math and do it again. If for some reason you notice anything that really is inaccurate on your bank statement, you do want to contact your bank as soon as possible. If for some reason there's a withdrawal on your bank statement that you know nothing about, maybe it's like an ATM withdrawal that came out of here, that could be a sign of fraud, or that could be a sign that something happened with your bank account. So that is something you would want to get in touch with your bank with as soon as you could to report that. Okay. So hopefully this makes a little bit more sense. I have some notes up on Classroom for you to take a look at. And I'm going to give you another one of these to maybe try on your own. And you can feel free to use this video to kind of walk you through that and learn a little bit more how to do this. Okay. So one of the questions I get all the time is, do I really have to do this? It's 2020. Everything's electronic. Do I have to do this? And the answer is, yeah, you probably should. First, it's one of the ways you're going to catch errors on your bank statement. If you're not paying attention to your bank statements, and if you're not logging into your app, you have no idea if anything is going wrong with your account, if there has been fraud. So you really have to do this just first to check errors. Secondly, you want to try to have those errors resolved timely. Some banks and some other, when you get to credit cards, you only have, let's say, 30 or 60 days to report problems. You can't come back to them 5 years later and say, there's $1,000 missing from my account. Some of them won't be able to help you at that point. So you really have to try to catch these things as soon as possible. It's the way for you to be aware of fraud or theft that might be happening. A couple of years ago, my brother's ATM account was kind of compromised, and there was some withdrawal that came out of his account from Toronto somewhere. And he's like, nope, I've never been in Toronto. I've never used an ATM in Toronto. And the bank was able to catch it and be able to put his money back in his account. But the only way he knew that was always by looking at his statements. And for some of you, it is another way to double check your spending and your income, to be able to work your budget, like we talked about in the last unit, and to really have visibility as to where your money's going, especially if you're someone who's using your bank account and using your debit card as a budgeting tool. This is kind of how you can maybe be aware of where your money is going by actually looking at your accounts. Right? So do I have to do this? You should. You really should do it. It's a very, very good process and a good habit to have. And in reality, once you kind of know how to do this process, doing this every month could take you 10 or 15 minutes a month just to make sure that everything's okay with your bank statement and that the bank is doing its job, keeping you safe and doing all its clerical work, and that you have an idea where your money's